Hello and welcome to the RoH Podcast, Episode 4. As always, I am Caden Cottenius, and joining me this week on the show for all things RoH and Zelda are the revolving doors of cohorts, comrades, and colleagues. The Mana Bear of RoH.
Hey.
The Serial Fluffer Aspen.
Hi there!
And another recently returned member and former podcast guest, Zello.
Hello!
Now, before we get to the meat and potatoes of this podcast, I'll once again remind everyone to hit that golden Triforce at the top of the page or the banner at the bottom to vote for us on top RP sites. We need the votes, and you'll earn yourself a better chance to win rubies if we get far up on their list and if you're chosen in the raffle.
Yay, money!
I will also state this now, that there's going to be a huge announcement at the end of this podcast after the dramatic post-readings, one that will more than likely be known by the point this comes out and is published and is online. But for now, not many people know it aside from people in the council and in this call. We're going to discuss it further, so please keep an ear out for that.
Such excite.
You bored her to death.
Damn it to hell.
Damn it to hell.
Alright. What are we to discuss this week?
You tell us, illustrious host.
I shall. As many of us know, one of the big things about RoH is the diverse amount of races we have to play as. Highland, Human, Sheikah, Zora, Goron, Kokiri, Deku, Wizro, Stalfos. Considering I'm saying all these out without really looking at a list, that's pretty good, because I'm probably sure I missed one, Rito. But, despite this list, it seems everyone tends to stick to the more human-like characters, the Highland, Human, Sheikah of the group. Why is that? Does anyone have any kind of idea why?
I think pretty much the basic idea is people can project themselves better on human-like races.
True
or
that.
project the idea of a character on a race that's like themselves. But of course, also, you can be up to pretty standards
Yes,
playing those as well.
I agree with that.
It seems very, very likely.
Zello has a great point. There's a lot of people don't like playing the races that aren't humanoid. You can't have this familiarity between them. Like, I mean, I'm probably one of the most guilty for that, because I don't like playing the Deku or the Rito, because I have style issues with them.
Racist.
Yeah, well, whatever. I don't know, they just don't appeal to me in that aspect. They don't feel like you can actually get into character as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think personal appealing has a lot to do with it. Like, you're gonna play what you think looks cool, so, you know, most people think Hylians and Zoras look cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
I think also culture has a thing to do with it, too. Some cultures are not quite as defined for some races, so it's not really sure how they'll interact with others. And also, those cultures don't necessarily reflect the ones that we're familiar with, either.
Such as?
Like the Gorons?
Yeah, I'd say the Gorons, but I have taken artistic liberties with them as well. So they don't necessarily correspond with what has been set up in the games. So it might have been my bad for pushing them in a wrong direction, but still, it's a brotherhood type race, and yes, you don't really see that often as a setup for a culture. Of course, there's groups and things like that, but not to set up an entire society.
Not exactly. And I come to think of it, I also didn't mention Gerudos, which is very popular, which doesn't surprise me. In fact,
Sexy sand girls.
yeah, that's probably a good reason why they're so popular.
Well, they're not so popular.
Well,
They've only been recently getting more popular, honestly. Because for the longest time it was like Nay and Aspen that were the only ones who were really Gerudo.
Yeah.
true, but there's been some Gerudos in past ROHs that, well, obviously none of y'all would know about because I'm the old member here. But there has been several from older ROHs, as I said. Zenko was one that was around. Zachary was another that was on the first ROH.
These sound like dude names.
They really do.
Believe it or not, they were both female in character and out of character. But they did sound kind of like dude names. That's kind of weird.
They really did, because like you say those names and then you take Aspen's character, or it's like which one sounds more female? Honestly,
Well, yeah, Danny sounds so female.
Well, you're not talking about her nickname, her
I
full
know.
name, okay?
But everyone calls her Danny.
It's easier.
So yeah,
I don't know. Another thing I was thinking, even for the, like this lesser race thing, you gotta also take into fact how the games are built. What races do you mostly have Link associate with? Like, yeah, he'll deal with the Goron or the Deku, but he's mostly around other Hylians, humans, and all that. So that could also play another part to people why they don't play the lesser races. They're not as known.
Yeah.
very
That
likely,
makes sense.
yeah. But for the most part, at least on ROH, there are a token amount of each race, at least. I think
Sort of.
Kokiri is kind of about the only one that doesn't have that many. I think there's like one Deku. And
Give it time. They'll have their
Moment in the
months
sun.
for popularity. Yeah, their moments in the sun.
Mm.
Like what was the most recent race that had a sudden boom? Was it the Stalfos?
Yes, the
Yes.
styles have like blown out of the water recently.
Blown out of, you mean out of the ground?
Whatever. Don't judge me.
People being resurrected, and then also new people that, I guess, don't want to be tied to mortality.
Which is interesting. I mean, if you look at the styles now, because you got Obs and Knack that are playing some of the more interesting styles, they're not like the standard villainous ones. I think that's why they're starting to take more appeal, because people are taking more liberty to making them more unique, in my opinion.
Oh, definitely. That's something that any race could be done with if people just take a little liberty with them. Zoros are kind of in that area too. They're pretty popular as well, but the disco, as I call them,
Nabisco.
Disco, Desbrico. He's more of the standard evil Stalfos from what I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a fish Stalfos.
Yes, he did not start off as a Stalfos.
Yeah.
So,
That's pretty cool.
Do you think more people will try to do that with their older characters?
It's an idea.
It's an idea. Oh, yeah.
I think that a lot of people may have contemplated it before. And of course, many people have suggested to some people for them to resurrect their characters that way. Because we had Jer revived Arkyler like that at one point. I don't know how long that lasted. It's been a while since then. But like people, Obs and I, of course, out of everybody, keep egging Drake on to bring back John.
Which is horrible, because I don't even make sense to bring him back, because he was just exploded.
Yeah, he disintegrated from what I hear.
Yes.
His atoms got pulled back together, puzzled into place.
But I think it's just an option that a lot of people would probably consider for a character that was killed off.
But you never see any female Stalfos.
That's true. Then again,
As far as we know.
That we know
Yeah.
of, yeah.
As far as we know, Hawkeye used to be a female.
Yeah, well, we've had this conversation.
Alright, any more thoughts on this topic?
No?
Alright, didn't think so. I mean, pretty much covered about as much as we could with it.
Woohoo.
Now that we will move on to the next topic of discussion. We didn't really say much about it, but it's something that we've all been through, I'm sure. Is when we're RPing with somebody, we got this story thought up, and something happens and somebody disappears.
Everyone's favorite thing in the world.
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
it's so frustrating.
Very, very, very frustrating.
So what are we talking about?
Well, how do we, as a person that's stuck with a person that has disappeared, a character that has disappeared, how do we handle it? How have we handled it? Does anyone want to start?
Well, since it happened to me a few months ago, actually, this happened to me with two people, kind of. And I didn't really handle either of those situations. Like, when it happened, it slowly happened, slowly started to happen. And I didn't really do anything. Like, my characters just sat there waiting for the other person to come back, and I just kind of lost interest with them for a while. The one got retired. Cheppy got retired, the Rito. And Annie just kind of waited in the water for Drake to come back from wherever the hell he went.
But
Yeah, that's how I handled that.
Well, look where Danny is now compared to where she was. Do you think this has been better for her?
Yeah, probably. Like I've actually been thinking to myself that the Danny I'm playing now, after losing her memory, is more like kind of Danny that I originally had in mind for her. Like, sassy and rough and tumble and playful kind of Danny. Whereas with Drake, she was going more along the lines of sappy and nice and not exactly what I initially imagined her to be. So in a way, yeah, I'd say this is better for her. Though I am still sad to have lost those memories in a way sometimes. Partially.
Well, that was one thing I could never understand is why you did have Danny going from what she was to something that she wasn't. Like, her whole character sheet was pretty much like null and void. I mean, you were describing it in your post that she was getting a little out of character, but it just struck me as odd that you'd have her going that way. So I honestly think, for my point of view, from you having her lose her memories, it's been far better. Like, she's more entertaining to read for me.
I don't know. I guess I was just trying to make her more compatible. Friendly? No, not friendly. More compatible with Drake, since she was with him for a while. But yeah.
I don't know. I like her more now.
Me too.
I agree. Mana, do you have anything you want to...
Ugh.
Yes, I think we all do. Like, mine was... Probably, I got ditched a few times. My first one was actually when I first started here. And I can't remember his name. It was like 1 week in, and I was ditched already. So I was like, what the hell do I do with my character? I think I waited like a good almost 2 months before I just said, screw it, I'm moving on.
My gosh.
Wow.
I'm oddly patient when I want to.
I cannot imagine you being that patient.
I am, honestly. A lot of my partners that I've lost on here and other sites, I generally will wait almost a month to 2 months before I will decide, alright, they're not coming back. So I do have patience, as odd as it sounds. Yeah, I always wait. And not on a row, but on my other sites, I'll end up messaging them and be like, okay, dude, where'd you go? Like, hello? And it happened twice with the same character on this one, with Liam. That one frustrated the crap out of me, because it was with Luna, and that's why she ended up retired twice, because he ditched me twice.
Aww.
Wow.
So, yes, I've had issues with it. I know! I should have listened. So now I've gotten a lot more picky about who I RP with, which is sad, but if you don't post often, that's where my impatience comes from, I will ditch your ass.
Don't blame you.
Well, it seems your pickiness is actually benefiting you.
Pickiness?
Yeah, that's what I said. Pickiness. That's a word, I think.
Maybe.
Well, as I was saying, your more higher standards as it comes to RP partners has seemed to have benefited you somewhat. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, I would, because I was actually with the same partner as Aspen. Like, I got ditched by Drake, and honestly, look at Lyra now. She's at 1,250 odd posts, and
woohoo!
Yeah, she's done a lot better than what she was. So, I think it was a good thing in that aspect.
Yeah, when you were still partnered with Drake, like, how often would you post?
Once a
Generally?
week.
What?
Yep.
What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a big difference now of what she did post and what she was.
Mm.
We
It's a
can
good
tell.
Yeah.
Actually, because it was right after the Kiroku event, and then real life decided to slap him in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is always a consistent problem when people disappear.
Yeah.
Zello, you got anything to add?
I gotta say, I'm more likely to say I'm the other side of the issue that I've left before. Twice, three times, I think.
Maybe.
I can't remember. But I hope that I didn't leave anybody hanging, except for, I know that I left Drake, and Victor and Kamazi hanging, but Drake and I both, at the same time, were like, we are so tired, and we just kind of stopped. I kind of stopped, and I think he followed suit, and it wasn't good behavior, and I shouldn't have handled it like that. In most other cases, I just kind of tried to tie up loose ends before I disappeared. Mostly it's been Corderis making people wait, or Corderis waiting, and I'm just be as patient as a rock. Not really, but she's more of an impatient person. It's always been mostly with Corderis. She's always been a very slow character, making people wait. But everybody else, I think, they weren't holding anybody up. But I always feel bad whenever I do just kind of disappear.
Well,
But then you come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I keep coming back.
Once you thought you were out, they pull you back in.
Yeah.
Just can't quit.
This time I'm not taking on 3 characters at once right when I get started, like I did
Good
last
idea.
time.
Which is
But-
probably a smarter idea, because then you're not overwhelming yourself again, right?
Yeah.
Because it comes down to that whole real life aspect. It's like, what is more important? Obviously, real life.
hmm
So,
More or
And while
less.
some palace roleplay is going a little slow, it's working out for me. Because I got some consistency going on in Goron City over here, so the palace can be as slow as it wants to right now.
Yeah.
All right.
That palace, though.
Every time.
As someone that was there for over like a year in real life, I can say that the palace RPs can be very slow for a long time. And as for me, as far as character RP characters disappearing, the only one that I can think of offhand for Caden would have been that Zora Prince from like 3 years ago.
Garuli?
I think, Garulia. We were
Verid's character, I think.
I don't remember who it was. I just know that he and I were like paired together to do something in RP. Like, I think there was some sort of royalty thing going on then. Before, I think this was before Sharky was even around. There was like we were going to set him up as the king of Zoras or something because he was a prince.
Mm-hmm.
And he just popped off the face of the earth, and Caden was stuck high and dry for like a couple of months.
Yeah, I think I remember that. I wasn't directly involved, but I remember hearing mention of that. And I think it has to be Garuli if it was about 3 years ago.
Yeah, and like shortly after that, kind of as a reward for being left high and dry, Caden became a general.
Yay! Oh, that actually would have happened before I came around then. Because I think Caden was a general before I joined.
He had just become a general when our characters met up in RP the first time.
That escalated quickly, just as a comment from that roleplay.
That was a very entertaining RP.
Indeed. Okay, so I guess it is about the right time then.
More or
That
less.
sucks. I don't remember Verid leaving that quickly, because I remember he had his character integrated with the thief. Wait, no. I think he did leave around that time. He fixed Nox's leg, and that was it. He was gone.
That's about
The
right.
memory, Shasha, who knows?
But anyway, back to the palace. I think we were talking about that. Ever since RoH 6 started, that place has been kind of a black hole of,
Yeah.
and it has always caused a couple of problems on the site. Why do you think that happens?
Politics really just drain a lot of people, I think.
Yeah,
And that's the
politics.
hub of politics in Hyrule. So people are like, I really don't want to be making like executive decisions today. Can this wait until the end of my life?
Well, it doesn't work that way, but
Yeah.
also, like you look at the people who are the royalty, some of them aren't active, and I think a lot of people forget that when you become that character, you don't really get the freedom as every other character. You can't leave the palace like, oh, I'm just going to go do this.
Not really.
Yeah.
You're kind of stuck there for a while, and if people aren't going to be there, it's kind of hard to stay active.
Yep.
Exactly. So what's the point at that point? Like, you're like, okay, I don't get the same freedom as everybody else, so...
It's like
Why?
it's a position that you have to sacrifice like freedom for. It's like if you're going to be dictating a country or something, you've got to just say, okay, this character's just got to, deal with it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's a means of actually handling it well, but it's just there's a cycle that starts. People will flock to you. I think you get overwhelmed, and then you're like, I can't handle these decisions that a king should make, and back off from the character, get into a slump, and just kind of rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Almost, I think, at that rate, like, since we have, like, the 4-slot characters, if you have a third or a second or a 4th slot, I'd almost have it as that character is not a main, so they can still obviously RP, but you can go take your other character and go do whatever the hell you want without having to rely solely on the one. At least that's my remedy.
Oh, definitely.
I think having a good balance is the best idea.
I agree. And it's weird now because when I was kind of basically the ruler of the palace, nothing major really happened in Hyrule. All the big stuff was happening in Termina during that period.
You just got a lucky break.
Well, I don't know if it was because I was in control and wasn't doing anything, or if Termina was just that much more entertaining at the time. Maybe a little of both.
That was when Archon became the big thing, right?
Yeah, the Archon was
Yeah.
pretty big at that point, so a little bit of that had to do with it. Loghain was dead, and Soren was
Woo!
yeah. I mean, as far as palace stuff went, I think the biggest thing was the Loghain funeral, which was pretty big, and
That was amazing to see happen, just for the sheer fact that it was so many people put together, but it flowed amazingly well. And
You
I
say
didn't think
that.
it was possible. Well,
But-
I guess it flowed more for some than others. I'm
Well,
kind of
yeah.
biased because I got to break the Aquamentus's legs.
yeah,
Yes.
So
that dragon attack was so fun. I'm glad Merrick had ticketed that like years earlier and just now brought it in, or had just brought it in for that.
See, and when that Logan's funeral was, that's when I first joined, so it was like chaotic to me having everybody just like in this big gathering. It's like, where
is
the
this
hell
how
do
it
I
usually
go?
happens?
Yeah, exactly.
In almost a weird way, that was almost a mini festival of sorts.
Yeah.
I never realized it was practically that. That's weird.
But a lot I've noticed too, even with the palace, not itself, but even just the city. After the Brotherhood died, a lot of activity seemed to die in there anyways. The Brotherhood seemed like it was one of the biggest places for people to RP. And when it all exploded, it was like, game over, nobody's coming here anymore.
Yeah.
Well, when RoH 6 originally started, the palace wasn't really the big hub. We were spread out a lot more. Castletown was more... not Castletown, Clocktown was really kind of the big area because we hadn't done Termina before and it was new. Originally, Lon Lon was a pretty big mecca of activity because a couple of us started there. I know my original tavern was there, and the first like 2 weeks, that was like one of the biggest places to RP, and then everyone disappeared. I think a festival happened when the king died, and everybody kind of moved on from there.
So many deaths of royals.
Well,
Yeah, but wasn't it like one person who had all the royalty?
Yes.
At one point, Loghain was Daltis, who was the king at the time, and then he became the regent as Loghain, and
Mm-hmm.
Shen was around, but not really a major part of the politics of the palace, and Soren kind of popped in at some point.
Pretty briefly. I think Soren came in after David. Yeah, after David kind of moved on. I don't know where he went, but there was one point where he had controlled Daltis and Loghain, and he also controlled Evelyn, who had been the former queen, and he was requesting another royal, and I was like, wait, how many royals have you had? I kind of looked into it, I was like,
It was he had a bit of a stranglehold, which was a little bit of a resentment of sorts because he kind of just had all those characters. But at the same time, it was consistent.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, you look at that to what it is now, at least the palace was consistent, as you said.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like having that foothold in the royal family really allowed a stability that has really been lost now. I actually mentioned it in roleplay that, Hyrule does not feel stable any longer because there's that consistency is gone.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Anything else to add to the black hole that is the palace?
Burn it down.
There
It
you
needs to
go.
be destroyed. That is the next major plot point.
Maybe.
Who knows?
We'll just have some characters TP the place.
Yeah.
Start small.
And paint boobs on the wall.
There we go. That'd be up to your characters, Aspen.
I'll do it. My kind of job.
All right. On that note, we move from RoH to more general Zelda topics. This week, the Zelda topic is the favorite Zelda song, either in-game or orchestra or what have you. Would anyone like to start this one?
I have one.
Okay.
You do?
I do.
Ooh.
The music that plays when he opens a chest.
Really?
Iconic.
Yes. That's my favorite song.
Which specific game? Though?
Well,
Aren't they the same in all of them?
they're all the basic same sound.
That's true. But there's also different chests too, that have different chimes.
Yeah.
It's true. Like, the boss chest has a different one than, yeah.
Yeah, I mean like the big chests with the special
Ah.
items. With
Yeah.
the glowy lights.
Yeah, that's what one of my ringtones is on my phone. I don't know. I think my favorite song of all time is still going to be an Ocarina, is the Bolio of Fire. Like, that was the best song I've ever heard in my life. I still love that one.
That is a pretty good song.
A lot of the temple songs I like, but I don't know, the Bolio of Fire was always my favorite, and like the Shadow one, I can't remember what the hell its name is.
I was going to say Nocturne of Shadow, but I don't know if that's it.
No, you're right, that's it.
Oh,
Wow.
all right.
Complete stab in the dark there.
No, you're right.
Good job.
Wow.
I've always liked the Ocarina songs. They've always been my favorite. But if I had to go for like an orchestrated, this is going to be the weird thing. Because I don't like Majora's Mask, but I love Majora's Mask soundtrack. Love it to bits and pieces.
Oh yeah, the Majora's Mask soundtrack is probably one of the better ones in the entire series.
Definitely. It just has a lot more melody, rhythm, it's just more compelling in my opinion.
Oh,
It really had to depict an atmosphere along with the visuals. The music did a really good job for like giving the feel of the game. So
Exactly.
I agree.
Because it was such a dark game, right? So it worked. It wasn't the happy-go-lucky trot through the field kind of thing. It was dark, and it affected the ambience so well.
Oh, I
Yeah.
agree. As far as me, I have to go back, way back, to the very first game, because, of course I do. The very first song you hear in the first game, the original opening theme.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we all know this theme. Yes.
Nope.
Yes. Yes.
I think Aspen doesn't because she's not as big as a Zelda fan as we are, but
Sorry.
it's alright. I mean, it's... I don't know how to explain it. I mean, it's unforgettable in a sense. And a lot of songs in the series kind of take cues from it. That and the original Overworld theme.
Yeah, I don't really remember that one as well.
Which one? The Overworld theme or the original theme from the first song?
Overworld theme.
Da,
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 da, da, da, da.
Dear.
We're nerds.
You guys just feel free to sing the songs now. How about that?
But it's the bass music that a lot of it's integrated into the other games, but I don't think it's an overworld theme exactly, since there are different zones now in most of the newer games.
Mm-hmm.
But it's integrated in some way in some parts. I think in every game. I don't know.
It's kind of the overworld theme in a lot of the older ones. I think they've moved less from that, or it might be underlay tone.
Mm-hmm. It's like I'll hear a piece of it every here and there in newer games.
Yeah.
But they try to be a lot more dynamic in their music choice now to give different sensations in different places and also at different times of day, since there's more hours of the day put into the games rather than it just being daylight all the time.
Oh yeah. Another song that has been in a lot of games is the Kakariko Village theme.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, the moment you hear that one, you know which village it is. It's never questioned.
Oh yeah.
It
I
is
think
just, it's relaxed.
And-
It's a very relaxed theme.
And oddly enough, it's like the perfect theme for the fishing pond in Ocarina of Time. Like, they couldn't have picked a better theme for that, and it's not even what it was supposed to be for. What are other favorites of y'all's?
I have to say my favorite, because I'm biased, and it was my first Zelda game I devoted hours to and completed. Midna's Lament. I'm a Twilight Princess fan, ridiculously so, and that was the key turning point in the game. That things became dire. Of course, they were dire in the beginning, but you personally felt it.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt so crucial to get to do your best to save her. It was just, and by itself, it's also a very powerful theme. But of course, it's not like a long-standing traditional theme that's been in all the games. But I still think that it has its place.
Oh, definitely.
I don't know, I think the Twilight music in general is just a little more haunting. Like, it has, I don't know how to explain it, but it gives you a little more chills. It's more dire and overall.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Midna's Lament is really good. I like that one too. I haven't really played Twilight Princess much.
I haven't played Twilight Princess in close to 6 years now. I need to go back and replay it. And that's not even talking about Skyward Sword here. Any more thoughts on music?
If you're going to bring up Skyward Sword, honestly, it does have good music. I will give it that. That's the only thing they did right.
The Nintendo Orchestra really doesn't fail.
No,
too often.
if you look at most of their games, they always hit the nail on the head with their soundtracks. They're always really good. So, I'd say Skyward Sword does have good music, but that's about it.
I'm trying to think. Fairy's Fountain?
That's generic tone, too, that you recognize.
Just how it's evolved over the ages.
It's a good thing,
or over the years. Yes, it is. And if you've listened to the 25th anniversary
soundtrack,
yes. It is, when it has differing instruments, it sounds so twangy in Ocarina of Time. As you play with the instruments, it can be very elegant. And also it was kind of not remixed but remade for Twilight Princess 2 for the Cave of Ordeals.
Huh. I was going to say, isn't that the character selection sound music as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
For most of the games, it is.
I know it is in The Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time.
Actually, I think it is for all the games.
I think it is, which is...
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that until just now.
You
I
wouldn't
don't know, it's
think-
nice and floaty, and it just
Yeah.
gets you in the game. You're not like getting all hell-bent and raging at the game in the starting of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it starts you off nice and slow.
It's kind of
Exactly.
it's kind of like the fishing pond thing. It just fits so well. You don't even think about it.
Yes, they're so calm and collected.
Ah,
Because you don't want to have like fishing music where it's just like raging. You'd be like so pissed off by the end of it.
so true, so true. All right, I think we're going to move on from the music and get into the more entertaining part of these podcasts, the dramatic post readings.
Yay!
Aspen, would you like to go first and explain who you're reading for?
I am reading a Winslow post, who is Fide's new character.
Oh.
Winslow Cloud Dark Mist the Fourth. I'm going to read one of his posts in the thread that he is having with Adara Drago, who we know as Suzu in chat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she just stole some silver cutlery from his what do you call it? Forge blacksmith shop thing. And he's chasing her, and things are about to go down in this post, though not exactly what you might think. So, here we go. Winslow's eyelids tapered into wincing slits when chilly gusts ripped tears from his eyes, and passing faces blurred into wet streaks past his shoulders. His coarse mitten clamped onto a silken sleeve only a ragged breath away from swinging into the blacksmith, and threw the arm back into the crowd. "Sorry!" He glanced over his shoulder at a cursing mouth, shrinking into the distance. "There she is." Godwin's shoes. Give me a second. Okay. Godwin's shoes dug into the pavement. Skidding sideways across the stones. As his face whipped towards golden braids thrashing against pedestrians. He rubbed the back of his wrist against his dripping nose, and his shoes clacked along the stones in a calmer stride towards the fleeing thief. He darted his squinting eyes about the shadows under the market pavilions and trained his ears on a chorus of voices slipping past him along the lengthy pathway. "This is that retardation that I can't with." His southern lip drove into its twin until his mouth fattened up like an angry cat, and his mittens tossed the heavy hammer from one palm to the other. "There isn't a path in hell that can lead me to a thief in this mess. Why'd there have to be a fainted sale today?" His silver eyes rolled towards a wooden stand under a beige canopy surrounded by crates stacked to the brim with exotic fruits. He wiped a mitten at the corner of his mouth when saliva gleamed on his skin. "Pay attention, Godwin. Don't even look at those juicy fruits under a cool shade." His eyes widened when a black cloak shot from the crates like a sparrow leaping from a perch. He stomped his leather shoes harder against the pavement, with the mallet swinging at his waist like a javelin ready to be swung. "Hey, I caught you, thief! You give up this mad chase for a chase you to your grave. I'm not opposed to hammering women who become thieves." "Wait a minute." His sharp brows met in a tight crinkle when the cloak ducked into a seafood pavilion and became one with the crates of iced fish. "Where's she gone to?" His pink lips remained puckered as his tongue lapped up a greasy odor, drawing spit to his throat. His eyes rolled towards steam drifting from a flaming cooktop, where an iron spatula flipped a broiling catfish onto its belly. His ragged shoes wandered over to an aged fisherman, patting his spatula onto a prime cutlet of skinned meat, like Godwin was deep in throes of sleepwalk. His eyelids fell shut. As his nose sucked in the juicy steam.
burning from the grill, and pat a large mitten onto his grumbling stomach. I sure could use a cut of that fish. 10 rupees, a curt reply snapped out the fisherman's wrinkled lips. Excuse me. As his spatula flipped, a smoked cutlet into the steam. Godwin snatched a hold of the fish midair and tossed a leather bag onto the fisherman's chopping block. Thank you. I will be taking this. He clamped his teeth onto the fish's head and ripped the blackened appendage off. Charred guts spilling from his mouth as his savage molars ground down the cooked organs, bone, and meat like a starving peasant. The fisherman only clamped his hands onto the edge of his cooktop and shrugged his shoulders before staring down at the rupees spilling out the leather bag. If that boy wants to eat an uncooked fish, that's his problem. Long as I get paid. He scooped the bag up into his back pocket. Godwin's cheeks suddenly ballooned as a slimy paste crawled down his throat, and he clamped a mitten over his mouth as his feet scurried down the street. What the hell am I eating? He stared down at a headless fish bleeding onto his mitten, and his eyes widened with shock. A shrill holler drew his head towards a clearing in the crowd, and his eyes dropped down to rupees tumbling across the pavement like a fish's head. He cringed as he looked down at his decapitated snack once more. His shoes charged towards that blasted robber, bending towards her spilled loot, and fish guts sprayed all over her precious rupees when his swollen cheeks couldn't take any more of that awful stench. Ah! He grabbed onto his apron and wiped the rough fabric across greasy bones and guts clinging to his mouth. His brow crinkled into a glare as he threw that nasty fish at her. Lady, you make me sick, stealing a hard-working man's living from him like this. He stomped a foot onto a rupee her hand was reaching for. Ah, yes, you are a thief indeed. Look at all this shiny loot. Winslow dropped to his knees and scrambled to pick up the remaining rupees before her hands could scoop them all, and tucked a handful of gems inside a great pouch in his apron. He narrowed his eyes as he stared at her gaunt face. You want to steal my stuff? Well, I'll steal yours too, and see how much you like it. He scrambled to his feet and threw a smirk over his shoulder as he took off into the crowd, then stumbled over a man's toe like a clumsy doofus. Whoa! His foot slipped out from underneath him, and the blacksmith crashed into a sack of flour, showering himself in a white mist like snow falling from the sky. He coughed up bland powder and brushed an ashy mitten down his apron, though his other mitt remained tightly clamped on his pouch in case that thief dared to reclaim her loot. At least I can no longer taste that disgusting thing on my tongue. He stuck his tongue out and brushed his mitt across a pinch of flowers, staining it white. That was hard.
That was something.
Just your...
I know. The
Very
noise.
strong and powerful.
Was that a good...
That was a very good reading of that post, I have to say. 10 out of 10.
That was hard, but fun.
I am reading an Aphodius post in the New Iron Knuckle Tavern. Hey, my tavern. From several months back. Legionnaire Cassell had demanded they meet within the New Iron Knuckle Tavern. With little choice and hoping to apologize for the inability to return to working for her, Af had acquiesced. I can't pronounce that word, so excuse me. As he stepped into the tavern, he felt a sense of relief that he'd chosen not to wear his plate for the day's errands. Drinking in armor was not unfamiliar, but it was hardly his preference. He stepped into the bar, the warm evening glow of the place shutting away the fallen night outside. Scanning the tables, his gaze fell on a woman pulling down a large mug of ale with some ease. Sighing, he stepped toward her and drew back a seat at the table. She did not bother to lift her head from the mug. Sorry, buddy, but I ain't looking for a date tonight. Got business to do. Alf smiled, deepening his voice slightly, and settled himself. The chair gave a crack of protest, and a chip in the wood on the edge of the seat scratched against his leg through the soft cloth of his leggings. It held, however, and he paid in no more mind. Oh, And what with whom would a wench such as yourself have business? The Legionnaire gave a non-committal shrug and pulled again from the mug. For a smaller frame, the woman drank a lot. He never decided if he considered it impressive or worrying. A slight gasp followed and a modest gulp. Some merciless either rushed or a little slow on the uptake. Surely there's a seat for a man such as myself. Her gaze still focused on the drink. He kicked his feet upon the table. The leather was still unfamiliar, but served far better for the jester. Within his greaves, it would have been loud, awkward, and more likely to splinter the table. He slid his hands behind his head, adopting an arrogant air that he'd consider ridiculous at any other time. And who in the name of the goddesses are you supposed to... As she lifted her gaze from the mug, the sneer of disdain melted to one of non-pulse recognition. Be. She finished. Her shoulders slumped slightly as she relaxed, unworried now by his presence. Legionnaire, dropping the deception from his voice. Alf nodded, and Arist bow, folding his arms over one another. Her gaze shifted quickly behind him, lips pouting slightly. Shush! She drained the last of her drink quickly, her eyes still looking beyond him. Don't say that. There's a guy over there who's looking better with every cup I drink. If he hears you, he might scare. Legionnaire Cassell went through suitors at a somewhat notorious pace. Unbelievably, considering her voice. More often, however, her forwardness and profession would scare away her potential paramours before she had time to grow bored with them. Alf was glad that not much had changed in that regard. I thought you weren't looking for a date. He dropped his feet off the table, the gesture having served its purpose, and kicked his heel against the table leg. The resultant clatter shifted her attention back to him. It wasn't out of fear, but rather the result of alertness and quick reflexes. The hardened warrior underneath. He had dragged out that secret vigilance, and they both knew it. Hiding her annoyance, she gave a cocky grin. I didn't say something about a date, Alf. But for the name, she spoke with a sultry tone that left her intentions obvious. The name was spoken with the same disdain commonly reserved for an annoying sibling. Oh, my apologies, Gwendolyn. He arched his eyebrows, replying in the haughty voice of a matter day. Glad we've been introduced. Go give me another pint. She leaned forward, one deceptively strong arm tugging down a blouse already immodest by most standards. Just imagine what that would look like with this voice. Alf rolled his eyes in exasperation as she pressed her upper body into the table, rolling her shoulders inward to accentuate, placing one palm against the nape of her neck, the connected elbow pivoting on the table.
This is really complex.
No, thank you.
A conversation with Cassell was an effort of holding her attention, and Alf had grown quite versed in the methods which were effective. He scooted to place himself between her and whatever individual she was looking toward behind him, and spoke with a tone of false curiosity. Should I prepare one for your guest as well, and the cell blade perhaps? She lifted the hand from her neck and placed it beneath her chin, feigning disinterest in his continued presence. Yeah, fine. Get 4. The words came out quickly as she tried to finish the conversation. She leaned again to her right. Alf's leg wrapped around the table, pulling it back toward him. Cassell, her weight placed on the table, slid forward involuntarily along with it. The candle set on the table flickered and danced, its base rocking slightly. She regarded him with an annoyed shock, then recomposed herself, expectantly. I know how to say it. I'm getting tongue-tied here.
Laughing too much.
A little bit. I didn't say I was drinking. She raised her eyebrows, puzzling out of his statement before blinking a too long blink. I might decide I want 1 second and want it real quickly. 5 then. Whatever. Alf shrugged, unwrapping his leg from the table. I'm going to tell him you keep knives in your breeches. You'll find out what that's true if you do. I get 6. Go. The Legionnaire twirled a finger through her wild, deep red hair as she looked past Alf, sighing. Alf stood to order the drinks as Gastel made strange gestures towards somebody behind him. He pondered just how hard he'd have to work in order to hold her attention for a whole of the evening, though sometimes I wonder why he would do that, considering how she sounds. Of course, it would probably necessitate dissuading a potential suitor. He laughed to himself. That kind of thing was not difficult with Legionnaire Gwendolyn Cassell. Okay, with the DPRs out of the way, we have to turn to something a bit more important and more serious. We have brought Kiroku in to talk about something that is going to be big. Well, by this time it goes up, it'll be big on the boards.
Big.
Kiroku, would you like to go ahead?
So there's a lot of details that we wanted to fix this time that we've had issues with on previous resets. Things varying from like everybody losing their characters to losing post count and feeling like that what they did didn't matter. But eventually we get to a point on pretty much every RoH where it becomes next to impossible to continue the storylines for various reasons. Either people leave or they just run out of steam for whatever reason, and there's a combination of reasons that we did it this time. A big part of that is that we've been around for so long. So we kind of needed to come up with a way to make it much easier for members to join. And because we're at a high point right now, we're getting new members weekly. People are staying around longer. People are posting more. It seemed like a really good time to try and handle this. We're not going to kill 6 immediately. We're actually going to wait until after the 4-year anniversary to make sure that it goes all the way through. And the plan is to have RoH 7 ready to launch by May 1st and have them run in tandem until the end of June, at which point we will close RoH 6.
Neat.
That's the basic gist that we got here. Does anyone in the call have any questions? Particularly Zello and Aspen, since y'all kind of just found out about this a few hours ago.
Just no, not really.
You were so primed before.
Well, I mean, he kind of answered all the questions that I might have had, but...
Well, that's a good thing. At least, like, honestly, because Will knows last night and Cam that I was mostly against this and might have been thinking about leaving. But a lot of things have been, like, assuaged for me. So, honestly, I think this is going to be a better thing for everybody overall. Like, the whole idea that 3 years worth of stuff has to be read for people to get active is just bullshit. It shouldn't be that way.
Especially when a lot of the stuff isn't at all recorded anywhere for people to know. They have to find out through chat or secondhand information, and then it's just almost too convoluted to get through.
We did a really, really bad job of keeping track of things, this RoH, as far as that's concerned, because, like, when Sharky was trying to make Kamazi, it took her, like, 3 weeks of research trying to go through all the RP stuff that people had done and all the character sheets just to find enough information to make the character that she wanted to make sense with the canon that we had. And that's just... it's absurd, and it's not really something that we can find acceptable for ourselves, I don't think. And that is something that we plan to fix in the future.
Mm-hmm. And, like, another example would be, while his stay was short-lived, Kylie, when he made the Rito Chieftain, there were, like, very obscure little pieces way back when. I mean, of course, it wouldn't have affected the canon very much if he had just kind of gone his own thing. But I do agree that, you know, having these archives of posts that are just everywhere. That, somebody can miss one small crucial detail when they're trying to build upon what other people have created. Does really make a detrimental kind of community.
Yep.
I do have a question though. I'm assuming that once the new site's up and running and the old one closes down, it'll become an archive. It'll be read only. Yeah. So are you going to have to buy a new domain, or will it?
No, we're going to be able to stack it together. I'm going to have to finagle something with the amount of space that we have, but that's next to nothing in comparison to the rest of the work. That's just tossing money at a problem. That's
okay.
Relatively easy to fix.
Money!
As far as a URL for the RoH 6 archive, will you use the .com for Realms of Hyrule? Because I think we still own that.
I'm not sure who owns that, actually.
Because I know...
I wish I did.
Yeah, because
I think it was Jer's little brother?
Ryan?
Yeah, I think it may have actually been Ryan that owned the rights to it. It may be Jer still, but I think when we lost 4... the rights kind of to that domain name kind of went out the window. So
or it might have been Eric.
It will probably just be something on the .net domain that has a different way to get to it. We'll probably have like a sticky link somewhere on either in the instruction manual or on the site when we start doing work to that, because we're going to have to incorporate the wiki stuff that Nay's planning for keeping track of everything.
Yeah, and as far as wikis go, I really hope that we keep to it a lot more than we did for 4 and this RoH, because I know we briefly brought it back for 6, and I think some people kind of used it, but...
Sort of. There was just already so much stuff going on when some people decided to take it up that it would have been impossible to compile it all together.
Yeah.
Exactly.
At that point.
At least from a fresh standpoint, we can do this from the start, right? We're not going to come at it halfway through.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And as far as setting goes for the new upcoming one, has it been decided yet, or is it still being discussed? Like where in the timeline it's going to sit?
We are probably going to go back in time 3 years, but it is going to mostly use the setting that we have right now. We're going to tweak it and basically treat it as like another dimension. So Zelda has obviously the split timelines, and I think we can utilize that for our purposes, both to make people swap back and forth, which is something that not fourth in this case, but to be able to go 2-7. We do have plans to allow characters that are on RoH 6 to physically transfer to 7. They'll have to, if they're over the maximum post count, they're going to have to edit down, obviously, and they'll probably it's going to be a ticket process where they'll have to explain how they would get between dimensions or whatever, but that's something that we wanted to address to make sure that people who didn't want to lose their characters could keep them. But we're also, because it's just going to be a parallel timeline, people can recreate characters that they already have with slight differences or no differences at all if they want.
Okay, so like no penalty for dead characters at this point, since it is going to be going back.
Yeah. Unless you want to do like a transfer from 6, in which case you can't really bring back a dead character that way.
We can always explain the alternate dimension with Archon. He did something crazy and sent like half the populace to a different dimension 3 years back.
Maybe.
That makes perfect sense, right?
It could work.
We haven't got all the details figured out yet here.
Yeah, the big thing for us is that, is my big concern is when we start talking about generational swaps, if it's kept to the staff, the only people that are going to be brainstorming during that period are the staff. So they get a huge jump start on trying to figure out what they want to do for the boards. And the idea is that they want to dish it out, but it doesn't give the regular member base as much of a chance.
Yeah.
So with the time when we have a month and a half before we're even going to launch 7. So there's enough time in that window for everybody to brainstorm and think everything up, while the staff actually does all the legwork to make sure that everything is in place, because there's a lot of rule clarifications and general instruction manual cleanup that needs to be done, because after 3 years, some of that stuff just hasn't even been touched yet.
Yeah.
And the battle system guide just is a mess.
And then after, like, recent complications, like defining a few more rules I can understand. And as far as the council system and the ticket system, those are all pretty much going to stay the same, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We're just trying to see if I can cover all the bases. When the site does come up, I'm sure that it'll still be, like, under construction. Is there going to be, like, a process where people can already, like, submit requests for characters, or will that have to wait until the site is completely ready?
No, we're intending soon to be able to hammer out the details for what we want to see for leadership tickets, which is another thing that we're going to do. Any major leadership position, either for a country or for a race, is going to need to have a ticket. And the person that tries to take that up needs to be active. That's going to be our biggest criteria for this, because the biggest problems that we've had is just basically with people staying active enough with it. And if we can avoid that, then I think that's a good idea. And I think we're going to try and get rid of the royalty perks just flat out and move it only to tickets. And that way we can have stuff set up for, like, family trees, like, even if it's not even necessarily names, like the Hyrulean royal family is something that we want to at least have a tree together for before we do anything. We may not put names into anything, but just having a tree so that people have a framework to work within, instead of just having to depend on one guy who hasn't been active on the site in, like, a year and a half, be around to explain things.
So, like, defining how many cousins, brothers,
exactly,
how many grandparents are still alive, things like that. Okay. That would really make the process a lot smoother for when people try to create the family.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
But the only changes that I think that are going to be maybe big with this setting are probably going to be with Termina, because I think it's generally agreed upon that there just wasn't enough going on in Termina on RoH 6. And I think if we can inject some stuff into Termina to make it better, I really think that we should, just to try and make the whole setting more interesting, instead of just focusing on Hyrule, which everybody knows and is familiar with to begin with, whereas Termina was only in, like, one game.
Mm-hmm. And this is going to be a question you'll probably slap me for. Labrina and Holodrum, are they still going to be considered outside and inaccessible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Too much area.
We had a discussion about it earlier in the chat, and the sad thing is we used to have 4 major areas, but if you think about how little in Termina was used most of the time, or even areas in Hyrule that just weren't used, like, hardly at all, like the Gerudo Desert was, like, never touched. Mm-hmm. Even after we finished the quest, the Lost Woods wasn't even hardly touched at all until the Vanguard opened their guild base there. So think about the small pockets that weren't touched on RoH 6, and then multiply that by about 10. And that's the issue that you have with having that much area. We just don't have the member base, really, to keep that many places active. And even if you did, you'd have to make sure that all of those areas are interesting, have some background to them, and have a reason for people to go there, which is a lot of work, frankly.
Yeah, speaking from experience from older ROHs, when we had more than 2 big areas, some just never got used. Like ROH 1, we had 3 major areas, and they were all introduced slowly. It wasn't like we just opened up with 3 big areas. We started with 1, then we had 2, and we had 3, and they all had quests involved. And the idea was that the quest would shoehorn people into these areas, but it didn't quite work. And it's just best just to keep with 2.
Yeah. It makes sense. I was just wondering if there had been any contemplation over it.
Yeah, there was a brief discussion about it, but it was while our member base is growing, it's still not big enough to need something like that. Unless we can if we can get Termina to where it's as popular as Hyrule is in 7, then maybe we'll consider something down the line. But I definitely don't want to make any promises about something like that.
Yeah.
Understandable. It's like, oh, where's that other country that you promised later on, huh? And get hounded about it for years and years.
Yeah.
Let's see. Races. Is it going to be the same specified races, or are you going to narrow it down, or?
No, we're going to leave it the same.
Okay.
Because with the battle system, there's a significant amount of programming that Satsuriku has had to do.
Oh yeah, Satsuriku.
You automate all the stuff that he has done, and I don't want him to drive up to where I live and murder me. So.
Yeah.
I think that will stay the same.
And considering like the number of races that aren't commonly used, it makes sense to just keep it the way it is, along with the whole programming as well. Let's see if there's anything else. I don't have anything else. Something probably come up later that I'll ask in chat once people have read, but that's all the questions that I can think about now.
All right. Anything else? Any last questions from anybody, really? Maybe not. No. I feel like this is going to be a big part of the podcast for the coming weeks, where we just kind of have a Q&A about some things.
Which might not be a bad thing. At least people can address their concerns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, probably if it becomes a big enough concern, we can actually have a thread posted and people like post questions or send questions via PM and they'll answer next week. Maybe.
With that, yeah, that would be a good idea too. But also, like in Will's post, he has some of us scribes listed down. If you guys got questions, you guys can come and ask us. We're not going to totally turn away the community. You guys have a voice, so you might as well use it.
I don't believe you. I don't believe
Hey!
you.
Shut your face.
Government lies.
Well, on that note, I think this will end the podcast for this week. Big things are coming to RoH, and we will keep everyone updated, both on the site and this, and in chat. On that note, I will say goodbye. Have a nice day. Don't drink toilet water because it might kill you.
Jesus.
It's true.
What the heck?
I mean, it may be out of the blue, but don't.
I couldn't think of a good ending, okay?